Should start to work. There we go. I'm always a little bit concerned with Zoom that there's a delay from the time that you start a webinar to people actually enter as to whether or not they've had a change of mind. But I can see this evening. So thank you very much to Christine, Emma, Laura, Lisa, and Vanessa, and Kerry Lee, who's just joined as well, Amy, and others coming in as we speak. So good evening, everybody. I'm going to give it a minute or two, everyone, just to let everybody else who's registered give a chance to sign in and join us. Hopefully the next 45 minutes will be better than whatever's on the TV this evening. So we shall wow you with some assistive technology news and various bits and pieces. So like I say, thank you all very much. My name is Matt. I am the CEO of AT Superstore. And I'm joined this evening very kindly by David Curran. So David, would you like to just introduce yourself to everybody?
Yeah, hi, thank you, Matt, and thank you for inviting me along today. For those of you who haven't met me before, I'm Assistive Technology Lead at a school called Moon Hall down in Reigate. We're a dyslexic specialist school. We've got 197 students on roll. All of our students are dyslexic. Many have got additional neurodivergent needs, ADHD, autism, for example. We follow a mainstream curriculum, and obviously, like I say, about 4 years ago, we put assistive technology onto the timetable. So all our senior schools have got 1 hour lesson. 1 hour a lesson a week, doing touch typing, text to speech, speech to text. We've put an AI program in place now as well. So obviously you can see the natural link between us and AT Superstore.
Brilliant, thank you, David. I didn't realise it was an hour a week. I mean, that's great to hear and stuff that you're actually getting those pupils and stuff into using AT and stuff. And we'll go through that with everybody in this session. And David's going to share his knowledge and background and what the school stuff and do as well. So I'm just going to put the should be on. There we go. To put some live transcript on. As we go through the presentation stuff in the webinar this evening, everybody, if you have got any questions, please feel free to put them into the chat window. Myself and David are here to answer any questions and stuff that you've got. So put them in there and we'll aim to answer those as we go through. So just a little quick bit about AT Superstore. Myself and business partners have been in AT for many years, when we probably both had hair and were considerably younger. And what we wanted to do is to bring lots of different AT to the likes of parents like yourselves or people in school, NHS, various different sectors, so they could see some of all the great AT that is available, how there's lots of different tech out there, how different that is, and how I think, and David, you probably would agree with me on this one, how there isn't just one piece of tech for everybody. There is lots of different stuff. One will work for some people and it maybe doesn't work for others. There's also, I think, and David, you mentioned this, and we'll touch on this a bit further on, is AI now. So AI is becoming a big part of, I guess, what we do in everyday life. That's also now becoming part of assistive technology. And it's amazing to see what a difference and stuff that makes in terms of whether that's in school, whether that's at home, lots of different things out there. So hopefully during the session, we'll be able to touch on some of those for everybody. So I'm now going to attempt to share my screen, and then we're going to go in and have a little look at presentation stuff that we've done. So if you just bear with me 2 seconds, everybody, hopefully I will be able to get that working. And hopefully everybody should be able to see that now. David, is that all coming through?
Seems to be to me, yeah.
Perfect. So what we're going to cover in this session this evening. So we're going to look at what is the best assistive tech for schools, exams at home. As we said before, there are various different types of technology. We can even see that in some of the imagery and stuff there, whether that be on a laptop, is it a Chromebook, is it a mobile phone, is it a tablet? Lots of different ways that we can access that tech now. David's going to talk about what's allowed in official exams. So what type of technology and stuff can those pupils take with them into those exams? How to get started with tech at home. So I think that's a good place to sort of look and stuff is, how's the child going to access the technology? Is it going to be the tablet? Is it going to be their phone? How do they do that at home? And then again, how to advocate support for that your child deserves. So we've got an interesting piece a bit further on, of which I was also having a very in-depth conversation with a colleague of mine today around EHCP stuff, and yeah, she was talking about that, and she's got some very good ideas on that. So it'll be interesting to see if we can make that come to fruition as well. So, what is assistive tech now? This is an interesting one. So I guess, David, probably what we're talking about here is what I guess we in the sector would maybe predominantly class as sort of as digital assistive technology. I know from history of typing assistive technology into Google many years ago, it would come up with all kinds of stuff. And actually, where I was based at the time, it came up as assistive technology being things like bath aids and things like that. So I guess a technology that it assumed was then going to be assistive in terms of what people were using maybe and for physical disabilities more. But I think what we're looking at and stuff at the moment is those simple tools that are there to support. So whether that be with reading, with writing, organization, focus. And I guess there's a few on there, David. Is there any sort of things there that sort of jump out at you that you sort of within the school sort of environment that you're using?
Yeah. When I'm talking to the students in particular, and we do similar sort of things with parents as well, and go out into other schools. These are my best assistive tech. Just my glasses. So I'll joke with the students when they say, "Oh, what does this mean?" And I can't read it on the screen, so I just need to go and get my assistive tech. And any assistive tech is just any technology that kind of helps. You mentioned there it's kind of we generally see assistive technology as being sort of digital technology now as well. But quite often it's not as much the technology as the acceptance of assistive aids. I always kind of talk about when I come out of the co-op, I wouldn't sort of make the person in a wheelchair. I wouldn't go, no, you can't come up the ramp. You've got to go up the stairs like everybody else. It's making sure not only that you know how to use that assistive technology, but that the world itself is allowing you to be able to use that technology and making sure it's more acceptable. For example, my daughter's dyslexic. I found out in year 8, and it's taken her to year 10. She's still very wary about using, for example, text to speech to text, where she talks out loud. She's in a classroom, and I've spent 20 odd years, 17 years in state education. And it's creating an environment where students feel comfortable to use that assistive technology as well. So it's not just kind of making sure that you're aware of what the technology is, but making sure that we create an environment for our students to learn. But yeah, text to speech, speech to text, yeah, top of the list.
Perfect. Yeah, brilliant. And I think that's it, isn't it? It's the environment and stuff where, individuals that are happy to sort of to use that technology and stuff as well. And I think that's probably changing now as well in terms of how we access that technology. There's an incredible amount of assistive tech now available in the cloud so that that individual doesn't have to be on that particular machine in that particular room. They can access that wherever they are. And I think that's also, I've seen cases where that's actually, I guess, encouraged more individuals to start using the tech because they don't have to have it on a particular machine. And it's not, I guess, highlighting them actually using it and stuff, and they can see the benefits of being able to access it and the information that they need to. So yeah, some quite interesting bits and pieces and stuff on there. So what's popular in 2025? So David, as you mentioned, things like text to speech and speech to text. I remember going to a education event many years ago, where somebody was talking about the fact that they'd seen this technology in where you could press the button and talk and it would write it on the screen and stuff. And this was just incredible. We're talking about things like Dragon, where I think we're version 16 now. But also where we've got that type of technology available in a lot of the stuff that we use day to day and things like mobile phones, etc. So it's interesting how that's becoming more mainstream.
You
Example,
use things like Siri and Alexa, and all of that is speech to text.
yeah,
They're very
absolutely.
commonplace.
Yeah, and I think that's quite an interesting bit that that is. if you like, mainstream, that so many people use in their houses, but actually how that technology in an education and sort of situation is makes such a difference. Um, so things like digital note taking, we've got mind mapping tools again for those that are visual. There's a recent product come out on the market where designed again for dyslexic users that actually takes your notes and then creates them into a mind map at the point of doing it. So again, bringing in two different types of technology together there. It's a product called Ivy Notes. So it's interesting to see what's there and stuff. From your point of view, Dave, what sort of things do you tend to sort of see within 2025 being popular?
I'm I say AI has become the next sort of biggest thing, and it's strange because AI, text to speech, speech to text, that mapping shapes and sounds was kind of the origin of AI. So back in 1956 with the Dartmouth Conference, the first sort of idea behind AI was to map shapes and sounds together. And like you say, with the advent of the cloud, it took a lot of the processing off the actual device itself, which meant that we could use text to speech and speech to text. Like I say, we teach it sort of very early on in our school, but we make sure that it assists and it helps. So we work very closely with our English department, with our literacy program, to make sure we're always assisting. And I think that's a big sort of thing when you're doing it. There's a difference between using assistive technology at home and using it at school. And for parents out there, I'd be having these conversations, talk to your schools, find out what's being used in your school, maybe make some suggestions from tonight, some new things as well. But yeah, we're seeing more and more, like say with things like ChatGPT, for example, you can talk into ChatGPT, you can hold a conversation. And if we thought that handwriting was dead or dying a couple of years ago, when everyone started getting devices, you can kind of see where typing's going as well. You know, you can kind of see that that's being edged out as well now. But yeah, text to speech, speech to text.
Yeah, absolutely and stuff. And yeah, and these things will come sort of like I say more mainstream, I guess. We've always touched obviously on the AI side of stuff. Again, wearable. So there's a lot more wearable tech, I think, from an assistive technology point of view that's coming out there now as well. Portable exam support tools. Again, those type of things and stuff we're seeing more and more within 2025 and you know different sort of especially around some of the portable devices, how people are using those for different, I guess, applications. You know, from dyslexia, we're seeing a lot of schools where they use them for EAL as well. Again, using some of the features and stuff within there. So yeah, I think as we go through this, we'll probably, like you say, see a lot more of the AI stuff coming into it, and then how that then sort of turns into some more of the products and stuff we see. So this is where I am going to be passing over to David in his wisdom and stuff on here because I think he is very successful navigating some of this information and stuff, which I know can be quite a minefield out there. So David, I'm just going to be here now as the chief slide clicker for the next few.
I'll give you a nod then, shall I, Matt?
Yes, please.
Right then, hi folks. Like I say, just a brief background. It's 23 years. Somebody mentioned a couple of days ago that I've been teaching. So when I started out as a design technology teacher, teaching sort of 32, 34 students in state schools in a workshop. And I remember sort of writing on huge, great big notepads, and then for the first year, my brain was trying to work out how on earth can I write them so that I can use these notepads again, so we don't have to keep writing them out every lesson. So even in my sort of relatively short teaching career, whereas now I'm sitting on a laptop, and I kind of do my work on a laptop and I throw it up onto a whiteboard, I can interact with that whiteboard. So even as a teacher, I've seen technology sort of advance greatly. Like I say, the last 4 years I've been at Moon Hall, and we're very, very lucky that we're an independent school, but the majority of our students come from state education. So the majority of them are paid for by the state to come to our school because state schools can't meet their need. It's very, very, like I say, we're sitting in quite an, I've got elevated in my head. I feel quite privileged that our students have got the one-to-one devices, so they've got a personal device, and that just opens up just a completely new world. Having that device, having ownership of that device, being able to set that device up how they want it set up, the way it looks. It might just be accessibility features. It might just be the size of the text. So, for example, my iPhone that I kind of walk around with, I can kind of read it when it's on the other side of the room. When I put it close up to me, I go into the accessibility settings and make sure I put my large text so I can read my phone up close. Just things like sort of screen masking, for example, just making it sort of very, very comfortable for the student to use, and making sure, and this is where I say I kind of have to think back to when I was in state education, and I kind of transfer back to my daughter, who's in a class of 32 students, and whether or not she'd actually want to use that laptop. And she's had to take, it's taken sort of 18 months, 2 years for her to get comfortable enough to be able to use that laptop amongst her peers. Now that she can use it, just the world has just opened to her. Word processors. So yeah, we're talking about exams, but I'm kind of talking the long term, because what you'll see, and I don't know, yeah, I've written it down the bottom there in the third point, usual classroom practice. If you think kind of long term, whenever your child is going to be sitting exams, then whatever they're using their exams has to be their normal way of working. So, for example, if you're sort of asking your school and your child is able to use a word processor, or you're asking your child to use a word processor at home, so you can provide evidence for the school that it improves their access to education, it improves their learning. We've got to kind of make sure that's their normal way of working going into sort of year 11, and then sort of into college as well. So we've got to kind of bear that in the background all the time. It's permitted if it's the candidate's normal way of working. So in an exam, if it's the candidate's normal way of working, if they're used to working on laptops, if they're used to working on devices, whether it's iPads or Chromebooks, for example, yeah, then providing the school has put the access arrangement in place, and then your child can use that word processor. Spelling and grammar checkers. So, for example, I've got sort of friends that work in colleges, and they sort of openly allow students to use Grammarly. We can use it within school. I've written down here spelling and grammar check functions. They must be disabled unless a spelling and grammar SPAG mark is, they've got an exemption for that. So again, bear that in mind, particularly if your child's going into year 10, year 11 or sitting exams, as to whether or not that's, and have those conversations with your exams officer or with your SEND person at school. Yeah, the device mustn't have any other assistive technology unless approved. If Matt can stick his fingers in his ears now, we're a Microsoft school, so we use Microsoft. There's a lot of free dictate and read aloud and immersive reader functions on there as well. Those are all based on the cloud, so they work on the laptop, but they actually work from the cloud, so they're not accessible in the exam situation. So we use, I'm going to say Everway. It used to be Text Help. They've just changed their name. Is that right, Matt?
That is correct. Yeah.
So we use Read and Write. So we use a paid for license for our students. So again, in our senior school, we try and get them used to using that in the classroom and at home on their devices in order to be able to use that in the exam. That's their normal way of working. So yeah, word processors, that's number one. Ready?
I've jumped it. I went straight. I was so
perfect timing. So yeah, computer reader and reading software. I mentioned this Read and Write. Clara Read again comes under the same company umbrella. My daughter uses that, for example. My daughter, her dyslexia is not necessarily her reading and her writing; it's her processing speed. So by being able to listen to the words while she's reading the words, it's called bimodal reading, and it just strengthens the information that's going in, and she's able to retain the information. Also, she's able to then go back when she's got lots of instructions, she's able to go back and then check. So yeah, computer readers and reading software. If your child has got access to a human reader, then the human reader is permitted unless the assessment specifically tests reading abilities. So if they're allowed a human reader and they're used to having a laptop and using text to speech and text to speech, so they're listening to the text, then they can have either a physical reader in the exam or they can have a digital reader in the exam. So our year 11 students, lots of them are independent, so they don't really want that person physically sitting next to them. Some of them have somebody sitting next to them, some of them are independent, don't want them, and some of them we've got what's known as roaming readers. So it might be 4 students that are sitting there, and then there'll be one sort of reader that might come along and help them with one word here or one sentence there. English paper 2, I want to say question 5, is a text. It's an interpretation, so they've got to understand the text. With that, you cannot have a physical reader read that out to the student. So it might sound strange, but in one of the exams, and it's English, you cannot have a physical reader, but students are allowed to use their digital readers. Like I say, all our students are dyslexic, so they're all entitled to have a reader, whether that's a physical or a digital reader. But again, have those conversations with school. Speech recognition software. So that's the dictates, that's the opposite, it's being able to speak. So if your child is allowed a scribe, and again, if it's their usual way of working, and again, have a conversation with himself, have a conversation with Matt, we're perfectly happy to sort of jump on a call and talk with individuals. I know that AT Superstore has got kind of where you can speak to somebody and you can go through some of this software as well. If it's their normal way of working and they're entitled to a scribe, then they're allowed to use a dictate feature. Again, quite a lot of our year 11s, they don't want that person sitting next to them. They'll just flick on their microphone. It's strange sometimes. Sometimes you sit there in a classroom and you don't actually hear them anymore. They just kind of flick the microphone on. It might be one word here or one, a sentence there. Some of our students dictate all of it and they'll say full stop and question mark. Generally, our students will sit there and type and then they'll kind of just flick it on for one word here or one word there. But again, it's got to be the student's usual way of working in order to be able to use that in the exam.
Yeah.
Okay. These I'm less familiar with. Again, like I say, Matt will be the specialist. I'll point in the right direction. But yeah, electronic magnifiers, screen magnifiers. So if your child's got visual impairments, then again, there's assistive technology out there to help. Again, it's got to be the candidate's normal or the student's normal way of working. Screen readers, braille readers, again, it's not my field of specialism, so I'll hand that over. But again, I'll put all the little links. This is the JCQ at the bottom. So these are the access arrangement links. Are we sharing the PowerPoint, the slideshow?
Yeah, we'll put out the information and stuff after so everybody, because David's kindly done this. And again, like I say, around those electronic screen magnifiers and things like that, there are lots of products out there. People at Optelec, for example, have a lot of great handheld devices. There's also products from a company called Dolphin and stuff around there from a software perspective. So again, there are lots of devices and stuff within that, and again within the braille readers as well, where again users and stuff. And what we tend to find with those sort of screen magnifiers, electronic magnifiers and stuff, is that again they will be very much part of that individual's daily sort of processes, if you like, in terms of daily life and using them in school, etc., and things like that. So again, something they wouldn't then be able to use within the exams and stuff, providing obviously meeting the requirements.
Okay, but yeah, put all the links in there. So if you find it benefits your child at home, yeah, go in and have a conversation. Provide the evidence as well. Don't feel as though, and I'll explain a bit better about sort of the Equalities Act, etc. But if it's helping, if it's benefiting, then use that as evidence and go in and have a conversation with somebody in school.
Absolutely.
Okay. So I mentioned this, and this is the important notice. All assistive technology must be the candidate's normal way of working, and that's where you guys, thank you so much for jumping on a call today. Like I say, as a parent of a dyslexic child, it's sometimes you have to go in and have those difficult conversations with your school and fight for your child's right in order to be able to get those access arrangements put in place. But yeah, it is a right. But to be able to use that in the exam, it's got to be their normal way of working. Don't kind of leave it until year 11. If you're in year 11, still, go in and have those conversations. But if your child, your young person's in year 6, year 7, year 8, have those conversations now. Get it into so that the student is comfortable using it, as well as it being sort of their normal way of working for the exam board, for evidence for the exam board. the students should also feel comfortable. When you're sitting in exam conditions, they can feel stressed, they can feel nervous. What they don't want then is kind of, how does this technology work, or kind of having those questions as well. They just need to be nice and calm. They know when they walk in what's happening, where the headset is, how things work, what they need to click, and it's just their normal way of working without them having to think about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And stuff. And like I say, we'll circulate these because there's obviously the links and stuff there to all that additional information and stuff as well.
Cool. Right. Thank you, like I say, for jumping on the call tonight. I'm going to talk a little bit about advocating for your child. I've got to make sure I've got my teacher hat on. I've got my parent hat as well here, so I've got to make sure I don't get too controversial. I'd like to think at Moon Hall that we support our students. Like I say, I remember sort of teaching in state education, and I kind of look back at some of my students now, and some of the students having issues in my classroom with behaviour. I can kind of link now so clearly, if only I knew then what I know now, to them just simply not being able to access the information, or being able to have all these great sort of thoughts and ideas in their head and not being able to express that and get that down. And I look back now and I just think that frustration must have, yeah, okay, total sympathy now. I'd like to think, like I say, the schools, especially school, we have the assistive technology. Matt mentioned before, we show all our students all the different technologies, and then they've got to find what works for them. And the only analogy I can come up with sometimes is, if you've got a young child and you teach them how to play the guitar, then they'll stop playing the guitar because they'll just get bored of it. But sometime in the future, they'll pick that guitar up, yeah, because they'll go to a party and they'll just start plinking, and then they'll refine, and they'll do it because they want to do it. Whereas probably they picked the guitar in the first place, and as a parent, we went, oh, let's get lessons, let's get YouTube clips, let's get this. Okay. And we've got to make sure we're not forcing the technology onto the child. Make sure the child is confident, support, guide, help, assist. Learn it yourself, learn it with them, learn that guitar with them, learn how to use text to speech and speech to text with them. So yeah, know your child's needs. Nobody knows your child better than you do. And then have those discussions. Okay, have those discussions with your school, have those discussions, reach out to us, yeah, and we'll find suitable solutions. Yeah. Keep records. Make sure, if you're going through the EHC process, make sure you write everything down. Look and see what helps them. Like I say, my daughter, it took a while for me to get over to her. She'll talk into a phone, doesn't have to text, will talk into a phone, but then isn't confident enough to then transfer those skills into a classroom where she's talking in front of her peers, because she doesn't want to seem to be different. Whereas she's kind of got to an age now where she's like, do you know what? I don't care. I need to get ahead. I need to advance. So yeah, find out what works with them at home. And if they do things in a particular, if they use Siri, if they use Alexa at home, then maybe that dictate feature, that speech to text feature, is something that we can, help with their education as well. Understand their rights. I know, like I say, I've been in, I don't know how many times, and this, my daughter's school must hate the sight of me. When they're saying one thing and I'm quoting, but no, in the access arrangements, it says that it has to be their normal way of working. She has to use it in lessons. You can't say that, so, but yeah. And again, a couple of little things there. Read the Send Code of Practice. It is a big read, but like I say, just kind of loose read and find out the bits that are relevant to your child. And please remember, particularly if your child's got an EHCP or a diagnosis, a dyslexic screening, for example, your child has a right to reasonable adjustments. And this is the Equality Act 2010. There's been several sort of appendages put onto that. But yeah, like I say, if your child is struggling within school, and there's a reason behind it, then your child has the right. Don't go in and ask for it in a nice way, but kind of demand it in a nice way. It is your child's right to have that reasonable adjustments put in place in an educational setting. Thank you, Matt. Next one. Okay. Yeah, communicate clearly with school. Just carry on those conversations. Yeah, arrange regular meetings with your Senko or the child's form tutor or whoever the point of contact is, and try and get, like I say, trying to get your information over to them. Make sure you're writing notes, keep a diary so we don't sort of repeat ourselves, but we can kind of strengthen that. If you're trialing things at home, then let the school know. If your child is doing touch typing at home, is there any time during the day that they can do that at school? If they're using text to speech or speech to text at home, then ask for them, where's the opportunity for them to use it at school, and provide that evidence for them. Ask for clear support plans. Yeah, are they on the SEN register? Do they have a support plan? Have they got an EHCP? Are you going through that process? Okay, but like I say, have those conversations and make sure it's clear in your head what strategies are being put in place. And then, yeah, use facts and examples. Yeah, if your child is using Alexa and Siri, that's text, speech to text, then explain that to the school, and then they can look into using that within the education setting. Ask about technology and access arrangements. So depending on where your child is on that little scale, if they're lower down the scale, we're probably not so worried so much at the moment about exam conditions or exam arrangements. But like I say, it's that getting into that normal way of working. But yeah, find out what technologies at your school have they got. They might say we've not got anything, but then you ask them a second time. Oh well, we might have some dusty old Chromebook that's been sat in the closet for however long that they can kind of dust down. And it might be, well, if I get your headset, can you give them a Chrome? Can my child use this in school? I've worked it with a school, so we provided a laptop, and then they provided sort of an area for her to use that, whether it's within the class or an area just outside the classroom, so she can go and dictate if she needs to. And then, yeah, like I say, speak to your school, find out for the exams, have an idea from this information that we've given, what are the access arrangements, what's available, and then, like I say, have those conversations with school and make sure, the Equalities Act, if your child is using it, then they're entitled to it in the school as well. But sometimes you have to, well, not sometimes, you have to provide that evidence for the school to send that evidence away in order to be able to apply for those access arrangements. So make sure it's your child's normal way of working.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, put it in writing. Yeah, please put it in writing, because sometimes you sit there at home and you think, did I say that? You sit there in a meeting, did I actually, did I? Okay, make notes. Yeah, please make notes. Keep those conversations going. Put it in writing for your own mentality, for your own sanity sometimes as well. But also it's good to just sort of go back and say, well, 6 months ago my child was doing this. Since we've been using this technology, this is what my child can do. My child's a lot happier. The behavior issues have kind of tended to go down as well. So it's not just kind of the technology, but look at your child as a whole. Like I said before, your child better than anybody else. So have those conversations with school, and yeah, keep a folder, keep a diary, keep a book. Okay, but make sure all your communications are in there. And then, yeah, know where to get help. Like I say, you've come on here tonight, so you've made a massive step. Thank you so much. Reach out to Matt, AT Superstore, reach out to me, reach out to our school. I put a couple of little sort of links on there as well. So SENDIAS, it's free, impartial, confidential support, and it's kind of with each LEA, so each learning education authority, so it's specific to your school as well. EPSIA offers free legal advice, so if you're going down the EHCP route and you want some legal advice, there is advice out there as well. And yeah, your EHCP needs assessment, so request. So if you don't feel that the support is enough and your child's sitting on an EHCP, then go in there. Very nicely demand. Yeah, this is our website. Like I say, I've the little link on there as well. The little quote that we've put at the top there is, our aim is for assistive technology to become part of all we do, for it to be second nature, so that all pupils can access this support independently and with confidence. Like I say, I kind of sit from quite a nice position where all our students are dyslexic, where they've all got devices. So in some ways, they're in quite a luxury when it comes to education. But yeah, if assistive technology is there, if your child's got an EHCP plan and on that plan it says that they're entitled to a laptop and your child's not getting a laptop at school, go in, make sure you have that conversation. It might be that you have to provide it, but the school then has to provide it because it's on their plan. But yeah, if you want to, on our school website, it's Assistive Technology. There's a load of free resources. We've got things like reading pens and OrCams and the like. So like I say, between us, between AT Superstore, we should have covered most bases, should I say.
Absolutely.
And I think that's back to you.
It is. So thank you, David. Really appreciate that. And in terms of, like you say, from that exam side and stuff, and I think more importantly, sharing from your perspective, not only from I guess a work point of view, but from a home life point of view as well, in terms of how you've navigated that and everything associated with it and stuff. So I think that's really interesting. I think the other thing I wanted to pick up on was exactly the sort of the point around, trying the technology. What works for some doesn't work for everybody. There's plenty out there. Like I say, I guess as us as AT Superstore, one of the things that we are keen to do is that it isn't a one size fits all. Some of the tech for some will be great, for others not. But if you don't try it or see it, you're never going to know what's going to be work for you and stuff. So, like I say, contact our guys and the team. They're very knowledgeable about what we have, what's right. Try this, that might not be very good for you, etc. Or there's lots of different ways of doing it. But again, I think looking at this in terms of how do you start at home, again, starting with something small, doing bits and pieces, bringing it into how, if you've never seen AT, and it's one of the things that we talk about regularly in house is that, and I'm sure you probably do as well, though, that we live this technology every day. To us, this is the norm. But actually, if this is the first time that you've ever encountered this technology, there is how do you start? Where do you start? How do you identify what works? So again, start small, try a couple of pieces of technology, see how you're getting with those. Start practicing using them in different areas and stuff like that. And like you say, we mentioned about doing it in your homework. And like I say, then start to use them in school, see how you get on with that in that environment. And I think, you know, it, it's very difficult. And I think, from for those within education and stuff where, they have with their peers and things and, using this bit of tech, do I want to use it? Do I want to be seen to be using it? That's a difficult thing to navigate. And I think, but it's getting confident with that kid to say, yeah, actually, I'm going to use it because it's making a big difference to me. And, I've had conversations with teachers where they've seen pupils using it and others in the class going, actually, okay, well, what is that? What are they using over there? And I might just have a little look at this myself. But it's having the confidence to do that, isn't it, as well? Um, and again, being positive about it, using that technology and stuff yourself, and saying, well, actually, okay, let me see, let me try this, see if it works for me. So those are just a few, I guess, little pointers and stuff from our side about getting into using the tech and stuff from there. So the other bit is, what else can you do, and in terms of again learning about that technology, talk to your child Senko and stuff about that in terms of what options do the school have, hopefully it isn't on the Chromebook that's at the bottom of a cupboard somewhere and we'll dig that out and dust it off and actually here you go, try that. But again, do that, look for those things. One of the things that we want to try and create AT Superstore for parents is a community, if you like, where they can come and share their experiences, what's worked. Have you seen this? Have you tried that? Get input from our guys, people like yourself, David, got that hands-on knowledge and stuff in terms of that. And again, look at those free tools, what out there, who, has anybody that's got a free trial of something that I can try, let's see if that works. Again, parent communities and things like that. So we really want to try and build that community on AT Superstore. Free consultations and stuff. We actually have a program that's available on AT Superstore called Tau XL, and that's an online CPD awareness course that actually looks at the disability impact of so many of the products and stuff that we've spoken about tonight in terms of and the one thing I personally like about it is it's not a sales pitch. It is been built by professionals to give you the disability impacts of the different products that are out there, so you can make some informed decisions from, like I said, from a sector that we live it every day, individuals don't. So you use all those resources, tap into people like yourself, David, the team here, Senkos and stuff, and just to get more awareness and stuff of what actually is available, I think. That's my clicking job is finished now, so I'm going to stop sharing the screen and stuff now, and let's just go back. And I guess we've got a couple of minutes left, everybody. So, has anybody got any questions and stuff for myself or David this evening? Anything at all, please put it in the chat window. Anything that we can help with, any directions and stuff. Kerry, I see you've got your hand up there. If you want to put anything in the chat window for us, that would be great, and we will try and answer that hopefully for you. I think I'll just wait and see if something comes through. But yeah, like I say, David, I think it's for us. It's about giving people that starting point, I guess, isn't it? If it's something they're not familiar with, how can we get people started on a journey into finding out what equipment, what tech and stuff is available, and then point them in a direction and stuff from there, really.
Yeah, definitely. The look on a child's face when, for years they've been struggling in school, and then I'll turn up at Moon Hall and we'll do a simple thing like put a headset on and just put dictate features, and they'll just talk, and then they'll see their word and they'll look on their face, and you'll end up like with a page of just like garbled whatever, because all for the first time they can get what's in their head onto a page. Then you've got to teach them the skills of being able to proofread it and then go back, and there's the graph, which is another skill as well. But yeah, it's that initial skill, and you mentioned there, just it's that confidence, and as parents that are here, get them to practice it away from their mates, or maybe have like one or two friends and get them to do it in a small group, or do it with them, and it's just building up that confidence. Never force them, just kind of show them what's there, show them what the benefits are. Kids are generally good kids. You know what I mean? They want to do right, particularly if you get them sort of young enough. If you get them in sort of later teenagers when they're kind of switching off. But again, it's just that it's kind of the reason why. Give them a why. If you do this, it's because. I don't sell them that. Do this because of the exams. Think beyond the exams. We teach our students assistive technology so that you can use this and they can become independent beyond the exams in the, college, workplace, universities. Don't just kind of think about school. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that's the key, isn't it? That there's that element of, and I think the one thing that we really love about the guys at Moon Hall is using that tech now. Using it in school, getting pupils used to it. There are, for example, there's the DSA scheme when students at university, there's access to work for the workplace, but individuals have got to get into those environments to be able to then access that equipment, like I say, through the government funded DSA scheme and access to work. But there's a proportion that don't get that far to use that, but could have probably benefited from that AT before that point. And I think that's always an interesting one to me, that there is a whole load of pupils and stuff that could benefit now, but actually the schemes are further down the line. So actually, how can we get them to use more of it earlier? But again, like I say, it creates that independence, gets them used to the technology, and ultimately becomes part of the norm for them as well. And I think that's the thing. And yeah, we've also seen this historically in sort of probably the workplace more than anywhere, where actually they see that technology going, okay, well, actually, yeah, we might even put that piece of software in place for that particular member of staff, but we can see how that could actually benefit everybody. So actually, we see, especially large corporates and stuff who have site licenses, some of this assistive technology, that people then go, actually, I'm going to use that because there's a feature of that actually is going to help me. And that's quite an interesting twist on it, I think.
Yeah, I'm smiling. We did a live one, didn't we, last year? You guys came along to Moon Hall and we did a parent invite. So one of our parents, obviously several parents came in. And then in January, one of the parents jumped onto one of our AI beginners course for parents as well. And she stayed on at the end of it. And she's, they don't come to Moon Hall. Their child goes elsewhere, unfortunately for them. But yeah, she was chatting away for about 5 minutes at the end of this webinar, talking about, I can't remember his name, this name, and going on about how they've been using it since the last time that we'd spoke, blah, blah, blah. And it was about 5 minutes into this conversation. And I was like, hold on a minute, what's your son's name? And she'd been talking about her husband. and she'd been talking about how her husband, and he's dyslexic, and he was now using it at work without thinking twice, and he just like flicks it on, and then as soon as I mentioned it, she became a little bit sort of like a little bit coy about it, about maybe it shouldn't be. And I just said no. As a teacher, when I'm doing my marking, for example, quite often what I'll do is I'll open up a Word document, I'll stick my headphones on and put a dictate feature. And then I've got several things on my screen, like my mark book or some of the work. I've got the physical work that they've made in DT, and I'll talk into the Word doc. I can't even see the Word doc. It's kind of sitting there in the background. I've got everything that I need to see. And then once I've done that, I've got all the information down, then I can kind of close things down. I can read the report, and then I can sort of like say proofread it and make it right. But yeah, just listening to when Man City have won another match on a Saturday and I'm cooking for the family in the evening, I can put the sports pages on and I'll get it to read it to me. So I'm kind of listening out loud to the sports pages while I'm doing something else. So I'm not dyslexic. It doesn't affect me like that, but I'm kind of using the technology without thinking twice now. It's just become part and parcel of what I do as well.
100%. I mean, we use an incredible amount of mind mapping software.
Yeah.
Well, one particular product in-house because I personally am quite a visual learner. I find it very easy to use a mind map in situations like that, or I'll quite often literally draw things to show people. But again, that's interesting how that sort of again starts to feed into other people using it who not necessarily think, well, okay, I don't use assistive technology. Yeah, but you're using that mind map, and that's quite interesting that you're now doing that without actually thinking about it. So we've had a couple of questions in as well. So let's have a look. So Kerry Lee's asked the first question. I'm a speech and language therapist. How can I help gather evidence for the parents at the school? I might sort of switch to you on this one, David, if you can possibly help on this one.
Yeah, again, this isn't my specialism. But yeah, gathering the evidence is kind of having those conversations. The initial thing is obviously speaking to the child, speaking to the parents, and finding out what the difficulties are. And then it's kind of mapping out what the difficulties are and coming up with some potential solutions. Evidence, I'm assuming that's evidence for use within the school or for use within the exams. Again, it's a lot of it is trialing it. So if you're using text to speech to text, and it's assisting the child in it being able to access the information or communicate that information, then that's evidence itself. And again, if it then becomes the child's normal way of working, then keep a record, keep a document. And again, I mentioned before, it might not be that your evidence is the amount of work that the child is doing. It might be that it's actually affecting their behavior. They're a lot calmer in class, for example, or they're able to access the information, or they're growing in confidence, and a lot of not being able to access information comes out in behavior, comes out in attitude, so document not only the AT evidence, but also maybe the child's behavior and performance within school as well. Are they generally a lot happier because they can now do what their friends are doing? So yeah, evidence. And again, write it down, have a conversation with your exams officer as well, find out what evidence they need in order to be able to send away.
Yeah, brilliant. Excellent. Cheers, David. Thank you. A couple more questions. Firstly, I might be able to, yeah, okay. Anne-Marie, I'm not sure why the chat isn't working. I'm going to have a little look at that afterwards. I may have the answer to that, so apologies. But you've also asked, are we sending the PowerPoint direct to parents of the school? So we'll send it out to you guys who've attended and stuff today as a follow-up to this. So you'll have a copy of that. And then lastly, we've got a question from Lisa. So Lisa wants to know, when schools are not willing to engage with AT, what do you do?
Make them.
Make them. There we go. We can't, that is.
Again, it is providing this evidence as well. I've had, like I say, I've been in and out of the school, and we've got this kind of agreement now that we've moved on to a notepad with a keyboard, wireless keyboard now, because she likes the larger screen, but doesn't want to put a huge, great big laptop in a bag and carrying it around. So yeah, we've had those conversations with the school. She got a dyslexic screening, and there was recommendations within that, and then I used that. It's that Equalities Act again. Your child is entitled to use it. So please just have those conversations, be firm, get in touch if you want to. Once you've got the information, you've got that knowledge behind you, and kind of mention to the school about the Equalities Act. Practice at home. Get your child at home to use that information. Get them maybe to write a short little story, and then get them maybe to dictate a story, and then take those 2 bits of work in and just provide it as evidence. This is what my child can do with this. This is what my child can do with that. Maybe do a homework, and then maybe upload a document, and get them to listen to it. So that, again, I mentioned bimodal reading, so they can read it and listen to it at the same time. Can you see the difference? And if you can see the difference, document that as evidence, and again, go in and have that conversation. But yeah, when I say make them, I don't mean sort of go in all guns blazing, because at the end of the day, we've all got to work together. But yeah, find the evidence. It might be that there's a compromise made. You might have to provide the device, but your child can take it in and use it in the school. And yeah, gain the confidence at home. Gain the confidence. Gain the evidence.
Absolutely. And like I say, reach out to people asking, can I try this? Can I take, like I say, a lot of the companies and stuff that we work with and stuff as well are more than happy to say, to trial, have a go with it, see how you get on, etc., etc. So, proof that it's working, show the school that it's working and stuff like that. And again, and I think the other thing that we talk about with assistive technology is that there's a potentially speaking to people that as soon as they hear the word technology, that there is a hefty price tag attached to this. And again, like you say, a phobia with it and stuff. I mean, this, we are not talking expensive solutions here either. We are talking, very competitive pieces of software compared with what, schools pay on other pieces of software, even with what you pay on software as an individual and stuff at home. These are very competitive prices and stuff like that. That because, again, it's no point restricting people from using this from a pricing point of view. The manufacturers out there, they want people to benefit. They want to see it make a difference and stuff like that. And as David said, we were very lucky to go in and to see the guys at Moon Hall. We did some recording there with some of the pupils using the technology. We've also got a charity partnership at AT Superstore with the Brain charity up in Liverpool. We've done some work with them, and to see individuals talking so passionately about using the technology, I think it's a great endorsement for what it can do and the differences and stuff that it can make.
And reach out to other parents as well within your school. When you're having a bad day, it's always nice to have somebody there that's been through the same as you. When you sit there sort of questioning, am I doing the right thing? I'm going into the school again. The school's going to hate me. They're not. Time, money, and resources. And schools are very sort of limited on all three. And sometimes it just needs somebody to give them that little push, or provide that little bit of expertise that maybe they've not got in the school. My child uses this at home. Oh, well, we've not got anybody at school that can do it. Yeah, well, if my child can come in and use it, then he can show other students as well, or sit there and go through it with a Senko or somebody, or a TA, somebody that's willing to do it. Find your champions, find your friends.
Absolutely. Brilliant. Well, I think that's wrapped up the questions by the looks of it, and it's heading towards 5 to 8 on a Wednesday evening. So thank you all very much for your time this evening, and David, thank you as well. We really do appreciate it. You're going to have to put up with me again tomorrow, unfortunately, but we've got another session tomorrow. But I've literally just going to put my email address there in the chat window for everybody. So if anybody's got any questions or anything from tonight, after you've been away and think about it, drop me an email. If it's something I can answer, I will do. If not, I will consult with Dave and we'll come back to you. And like I say, it's about sharing that information and stuff. And hopefully this evening has been beneficial, and that everybody's learned something from it. I know I certainly have and stuff. So like I say, David, thank you very much again. And everybody, thank you. And we'll see everybody soon. And I'll let you all go off and continue your evenings.
Thank you very much. Cheers, Matt. Thank you, everybody.
Cheers,
Bye-bye.
everybody. Thanks. Bye-bye.